Okay, this is South Mountain. Installment in the RSS sub-series for the CWB series. And I've only done one CWB game, so there's going to be a lot to talk about here. I've got some very broad views on CWB, but I love it for a lot of reasons, and I'll go into those briefly. But also I want to look at the RSS in particular, and then in real terms, this particular scenario, which is a very strange one. I haven't seen a lot of battles quite like this for the ACW, so, or for much of anything. I mean, Great Battles of History has some of these, but it's, you know, a last stand almost, possibly, or a delaying tactic or whatever. So it's a different flavor than you're used to for most battles, which are usually these kind of balanced things. All right, first, the CWB series. Ever since I picked up Thunder at the Crossroads way back in the early 90s, I've fallen in love with the series. All the other games kind of paled compared to Thunder because I really love Gettysburg, and it's just such a beautiful battle to fight out with the terrain involved, etc. Nice open areas with hills to dominate them. But most of the series I really enjoy. And why do I enjoy it? Well, clearly the orders writing is very nice, although I think that really kind of captures this. You don't completely control your troops. I've grown fonder of musket and pike's orders type system where you pick a general type of order and roll. But there's something very nice about this where you get to actually target and you get to issue a real order along the lines of go to, you know, this location, do this. The problem with that is the loose cannons aren't quite as devastating as I kind of hoped they'd be always, but that's okay. That's me maybe wanting really crazy things to happen in a game. You get crazy enough things when you don't pay attention to what the game's about. And you're not really looking at the victory conditions, or reinforcements come in where you didn't expect because of the edge of the map. Other things about the CWB that I liked, it's this very good level to handle the big battles. Now, that doesn't apply to this because here we're in the regimental subsystem. But I have one more, This Terrible Sound, from the regimental subseries. And I'm a little worried about playing it just because the big battles at a regimental level are monsters. I mean, Terrible Swift Sword's a monster. This Hallowed Ground is a monster. And I'm really kind of afraid, not of playing monsters in general, but that I don't gain that much by playing it out in that level of detail. For me, the average CWB game for Thunder, for Antietam, for Shiloh, these are all at the right level. And this one comes out at this, because it's regimental, but on a much smaller battle, it feels about right. It's, you know, as a game, it's a one-mapper. There are a decent number of pieces, but not a humongous amount. Probably about the same as most of the smaller CWB battles. Your Champion Hill, the 7 Days Pieces. I'm not sure what else really comes to mind for me. The winter one, Murfreesboro. Anyway, this is at about that right level. The problem that I have is the RSS itself. First of all, it seems kind of tacked on, and I mean it is, but it's not as organically developed as the CWB series is. So some things kind of don't work terribly well in my mind for it. Obviously, if you watched my wrap or some of the playthrough, I'm a little disturbed by the way the difference. So the core stoppage checks are based on divisional wreckage, and divisional wreckage requires all brigades in that division to be wrecked. I don't think that adequately mirrors what CWB did, where a divisional wreckage would be similar to what we have here with the other levels of wreckage and the wreckage in this game, which assigns a certain point. Hey, a unit gets wrecked at a certain point. Now, RSS, if you're using the little number counters here instead, the RSS units get wrecked at 50% no matter what. But they modified that a little bit by the quality of the units. And then you'll see the quality of individual brigades says, okay, it gets wrecked at a certain point. The quality of the division in a CWB game would be similar to this. It would say, okay, you've lost a certain number of brigades, your division is wrecked. There's no mirror to that in the system, and the 100% of the brigades are wrecked for a division to be wrecked seems a little bit extreme, and it seems to have created too much capability for an attacker to keep going in this scenario. I think it will be worse in some others as well. Just, yeah, that's my feeling on it. I would kind of like to see the divisions have their wreckage points fixed at a certain point, just as the brigades are, just as divisions are in the CWB series. I don't like this. I don't like the strength marker counters, so I used the full sheets. That gives me a little bit more detail than I wanted. This particular game had an issue in that they didn't give the fire levels for the artillery. Now in the sub-series rules, they give all the specific fire levels that the different corps and divisions, that the different corps have in their supply wagons. Unfortunately, they don't give that here. Now I could copy them from this terrible sound, and that probably wouldn't be too bad. But yeah, it's as though this this particular game was designed with the nobody plays with that anyway. Well, I would. One of the reasons I'd play for a regimental game is to really get the details of the supply rules. They spent a couple of pages on this optional artillery supply rule, and that's a big part of it for me. Other things that are painful, the series below the core level, so the command radiuses and all the different commanders and all the different units, I just couldn't keep track of them all, and they ended up kind of blurring together. I lost a unit here and there, and it ended up being swept along with other units' commands. To me, that's no big deal, but I could see if I was really worried about that, or if I was playing opposed, I would hold myself, to a higher standard and be more upset with myself because I couldn't meet that. The little divisional and brigade detachment counters. So in this one, every brigade and division detachment that's possible has a counter, but it's not specified to the unit. So if two units are kind of working together, you might get their headquarters unit confused. That's kind of a minor issue with it, especially with this scenario where a lot of units start out close together, working together, but all in detached orders. What else? The stacking rolls, man, they caused a lot of pain for me. It makes it almost impossible to adequately move your units. Is that more realistic? Probably, but it's a pain in the ass element that you don't even have over in the the regimental series that I'm more familiar with, the old the Berg series, Great Battles of the American Civil War. I found the fire levels, etc. Looking it up on the sheet of paper on the casualty sheet was painful. And like I say, I don't like the number counters, primarily because they're these stupid rotating counters. Now I have plenty of number counters I could use if I needed to. So my feeling is if I did one of the big ones, I'd probably break out my big old bag of Wellington's Victory or Terrible Swift Sword counters. Although the TSS counters definitely don't go high enough. I don't know if the Wellington's Victory do. Because these have to go up to 16. And I'd want to use those rather than these little rotating counters. I don't like rotating counters. I'm too likely to screw them up. I just know that. There was something I had to use them for recently. Not sure what. And I really disliked them there as well, and I think I broke out and used regular counters for that. Getting rid of extended lines. This means your formation fits only in a hex. You can't extend a formation out. Now you can combine formations, make a stack, and then that stack can move together. So if you've got beat up units, you can put them together, but you can't cover more territory with a unit. That feels a little wrong. I liked extended lines in CWB, and losing them made it so that I have holes in my line where I don't think I should. You know, I could have had a bunch of 1 strength point units covering an area, but instead, you know, like a 5 hex area, but instead I have a single 16 strength point unit in 1 hex, and everybody can wander around on it. It might add some complexity to the game, though, to spread the line out if you wanted to do it in the level of detail that I think it should be handled, where maybe the morale would be weakened by stretching your unit or something. I'm not sure. Weird line of sight rules in this one, where you can look through units, enemy units, and fire through them with your artillery. That's kind of a little odd. I didn't play with the RSS straggler rules. I played with the advanced straggler rules where you're tracking them individually on the sheets. There's another option where you kind of track them by brigade, I think. I didn't try that out. I would have used the most detailed rules that I possibly could have. Retire by prolong doesn't add a lot to the game. Yeah. So, mainly I felt like I was adding a layer of some finicky little stuff, a bunch of mechanically more difficult things that don't really add to the rules, but just because of the scale change, that didn't feel terribly pleasant to me. Somehow I never minded them as much in TSS. I didn't feel like units got mixed up as much. It would happen every so often, but here I definitely felt like I had too many units for the command levels and for the radiuses that I had. It may just be the scenario where units are ending up in column and then they end up one behind the other in the attacks, and it could be less to do with the system rules and a lot more to do with just how this scenario played out with this big column of attack for the Union, making it very easy to confuse and get units thrown into the wrong commands. But other than that, the counters kind of made it more difficult, especially because brigades all look alike. Okay, TSS, everything looks alike, so what? Yeah. At least here you had divisions colored differently, which is a kind of nice feature that the Brigade series had as well, where you have kind of like a little slightly different coloration on the units that helps you distinguish what they are. I had trouble seeing the numerical designation on the units, especially the Union units. I don't know if that's actually the counters or my eyes beginning to go bad. It felt like it was the counters, but it could be environmental conditions, my lighting here. It could be my eyes. I know they're beginning to go. It could be a lot of things, but I certainly found it harder to read these counters than I'm used to. So maybe it's just that, hey, I'm going to have that trouble from now on, and I'm going to have to pick up individual counters and bring them to my eye in a way where I didn't used to. My glasses should be pretty good. Maybe they're getting a little out of date too. It's been a couple of years. What about South Mountain itself? Weird scenario. And for that, it's more interesting, actually, because most of the CWB battles are largely these balanced battles where both sides have a fair chance. Here, the Confederates have no chance of holding this, I think. The only real question, you could do what I did and do this last stand type of thing, and oh boy, was that painful. The question then becomes, how do you get out and extricate your troops safely? And unfortunately, we didn't get to see that because I didn't realize what the scenario was about until I started adding up the victory points. Good reason to play the second time, right? It's definitely an interesting situation. Having seen the victory points, having seen where the battle went, I would have been trying to get Hood out of where he was. Probably could have prevented the kind of blowout where everything was just wrecked once I started seeing that I was being surrounded. I would have tried to get out of there and preserve that force to some extent. There were some victory point hexes I could have grabbed and probably defended. Good chance the Union wouldn't have been able to get things moving again. McClellan's not the greatest guy at getting his army on the move anyway. But it's definitely an interesting scenario where you have a lot of really cool choices that I didn't think you did. I'm used to this, okay, good ground, take it, hold it. This doesn't work that way. It's good ground, you just don't have the troops to hold it. So as soon as it starts looking like you won't be able to hold it, that's when you've got to start deciding, as the Confederates, what your options are and where you can go. And I didn't do that. I played kind of foolishly. Still was able to inflict a lot of losses. It's real good ground. Speaking of the good ground there, the map's kind of a weird thing. South Mountain has its own little special rules because we've got kind of this hilly terrain, slope terrain, whatever, in some of the mountainous areas. We've got the slopes represented as contour lines. That took a little getting used to. I'm not sure how much I got it right. I know I cheated a couple of times on line of sight and then had to kind of say, well, if I can see you, you can see me, and then tried to play it that way for the rest of the game. I think it probably is as easy to get used to this for line of sight as it is the regular CWB rules, which aren't trivial anyway. But it kind of sucks to have, your system change the design a little bit in the midstream. This is the last game that probably will ever be made for the RSS. I think they've abandoned the RSS completely and gone over to this LOB. Luckily, you can retrofit all your RSS games to LOB from what I understand. But that means getting a hold of a copy of the LOB rulebooks. I think I'm going to hold off on this terrible sound because I found this system a little finicky, fiddly, however you want to put it, and annoying. And from what I understand, the LOB is a little bit more streamlined. I want to give that a shot before I make my decision what I'm going to do with this terrible sound. Although clearly, I bought it because I want to play it. I'm considering the next one. there's one, None But Heroes is out right now. I realize I don't have anything on Antietam, and I don't know. Maybe if it goes on sale or... Because, on the other hand, maybe I'll contact Dean and see if I can buy just a copy of the LOB rules, a hard copy. You can download them all. Then I have to print it out, and that'll probably cost me about the same as buying a copy would, maybe a little less, but I got a stupid inkjet, so you know. Overall, this was something very interesting. I think this is the scale that I like the regimental games to be at. Those big ones are just a little too much to face again and again, and I feel like I get a better view with the CWB out of it. That's more the scale that I want for those. So then, well, do I want a regimental copy of all of them? Yeah, maybe, you know. I like playing Gettysburg out on TSS, and probably would pick up this Hallowed Ground if I ever see it real cheap. But this shows some rough edges that I'm hoping the LOB can clean up. That's the line of battle. I think that a game designed originally to operate on the regimental level rather than trying to patch it together from CWB would work better. On the other hand, this particular battle is such an interesting one that I'm not... My feeling is, you know, kind of a middling... I don't like this as much as any of the CWB games. But this situation is so interesting that it kind of boosts it up to that standard level of the CWB games for me. So, you know, overall, I'd say this is one of the more interesting situations to pick up. And certainly if you're looking at LOB, if you're willing to print it out yourself, or if you have picked up None But Heroes but want something smaller, I don't think you go wrong with this sucker, because it is such a weird scenario, and it presents a different situation than you're used to. I think for the Union it's pretty clear cut. The Union's got to get there fast and hard. And I probably screwed up by not taking Fox's Hole or whatever as quickly as I should have. Oh, the Fox's Gap, that's what. But the other, but that whole outflank and everything was kind of neat to watch happen in the surprise move. So I can't say I'm disappointed with what I did. It's just I could have blown through the defenses easily enough. It's just such an overwhelming force the Union has. And it's a question of, well, when you have overwhelming force, you want to just blast through the enemy, right? Well, the terrain's damn good. So the Confederates have this ability to hold off for a considerable amount of time before they get to make their decision, do they pull out or not. And you can see what happens if you watch my video if they don't pull out. It's kind of humorous, actually. All right, I guess it's back to flying colors, because I was hoping to do something else in between, but I don't want to learn something. I don't want to teach something. It's back to the work week and back to flying colors.